I think a lot of us in the room would look at this and say that there's pretty much a lack of inclusion of how we're going to sustain the surface waters of the state, the values that those surface waters bring to the state, how those surface waters are going to be used in the future. And there's no real identification here that I can see or in the report of any special group that's going to be looking at that on an ongoing basis moving forward so that we know that these surface waters are going to be protected now and for the future generations.
Was there a question in there?
That is a question. What are you going to do? Or what's the plan looking at?
We really think that resolving the adjudication is the vehicle to do that in terms of the tools that we have available to us. There's been prior efforts. I think in '94 there was a riparian effort, but the toolbox we have available to us today is what it is, and the general adjudication is the vehicle for, if we meet the needs of downstream water right holders, that keeps water in rivers, and that's kind of the vehicle that we have available to us as an agency under the rules and laws that we operate under today.
I thought I saw up there the whole concept that there might be the need for some changes to our laws, and maybe there's a need for looking at that in a large, because if the adjudication doesn't work, what is the fallback position if there's nothing in place?
Yeah, and how long will it take, and
exactly.
And what
the 40 years so far.
What the 40 years so far, and what are the consequences of waiting? I think this vision is really designed to initiate dialogue and initiate action, not only by the agency, but by groups like this group gathered here today. So I think it helps frame those discussions and frame the work that you all are doing and need to continue to do. There was a time when we were much more active participants in those efforts. I would like to get back to the day when we can be through additional resources at the agency to be able to more effectively participate in those activities.
And we'd like to be at the table. So the second question goes to cost, because the entire process here, we are in a competitive environment. California is going to be doing infrastructure, and Nevada is going to be doing infrastructure, we're going to be doing infrastructure, Mexico might be doing infrastructure, the federal government is going to have huge demands placed upon it for those purposes potentially, and then Arizona has to do infrastructure, even if we're going to bring in additional, there's only a certain amount of freeboard allowable on the current canal, and so, but my issue is, when you take a look at today's cost, the example in the vision said that San Diego was developing a plan to put in a 60,000 acre-foot desalination plant and run a pipe mile 10 miles inland to deal with the water coming in, and I imagine their plumbing system going back out at $700 million in today's cost. And this isn't CPI cost. This isn't Consumer Price Index. Right. This is construction cost.
Yep, correct.
So construction cost inflation is somewhere between 50 to 100%, sometimes more, than the CPI. So for every decade that we can delay final resolution of some of these issues, the cost goes up by increasing factors that even your population might not be able to keep up with. So what is the time horizon for an area like the Verde Valley with a population today of 250,000 people, tomorrow of 500,000 people, let's say, being able to afford the type of construction that would be required to bring desalinized water or Colorado River water in exchange into this area?
Well, there's a couple things that are going on there. One is actually there's a cost associated with operating these facilities that is massive as well. So you've got the huge capital costs, but then you also, these facilities use very large amounts of energy, and we'll actually have to build power plants in order to run these facilities. That's the downside. One of the good things that's been happening is that the membrane technology has improved and the efficiency of those membranes has improved. So on one hand, the longer you wait, the more cost-effective these things are getting in the terms of what energy it takes to operate them. It's going to be a balance of trying to make things work between when we need it today and when we need to bring them online, and that's really looking at the local, looking in more detail at the local options and really what we can squeeze out locally before we go to the big kahuna is kind of the way we need to look at these things. And
for our membership's sake, we're going to have a short meeting afterwards. It won't be too long because I want to give the audience here that was kind enough to get here time to be able to ask their questions. And so we're going to go a little bit further. And do you have some time? Do you have to any certain? Okay.
I'm fine.
We'll go over here to Dan first, and then Anita on this side.
You had mentioned at one point and congratulated the Verde planning area on some of the things that it's been doing right and well. And I wondered if you might enumerate a couple of those, what you see happening here that's laudable.
Some of the work that's been done on ditches along the Verde is an example, I think, of cooperative efforts between seemingly disparate interests that have really improved the quality of life of folks that would otherwise have to get up in the middle of the night and open up a gate, and it's keeping more water in the river is one example that I'd point to.
The future that we anticipate here is wholly different than the first slide that you showed. Can you talk a little bit about that, why the supply and the demand is different in your initial graph for the whole state, and the difference that the groundwater planning has made?
I'm not sure I
okay. So in other words,
I can go back to those slides if you.
Okay. In other words,
Maybe.
we are finding ways to reduce water use. And it may be that the citizens of Arizona do not want concrete all over the state, that what we want are the beautiful streams and the landscapes that brought us here. And there is something very time-honored. People follow the water, not people uneducated and illiterate about water being served water over which they have no control. So I would recommend that the state takes an entirely different track. I would recommend that you not look to the ocean, that you not look to other places to augment supply, that you look at the ways we have to conserve. It is valuable. It has been done. Your first slide showed the efficacy of what we have accomplished, and we can do more. So I really don't think that our only option is to look at all of these projects and that the strategic vision is way off base. Excuse me.
That's okay.
Tony, you want to comment on that?
Well, I did mention, so there is further conservation efforts embedded in these numbers. So there's actually increased conservation in the projections, but I will, these growth projections are not constrained by even our existing laws and rules. So these are really, this is a economic development view of water supply development, and that's the charge that we were given. I mean, if I may, we as a state we can't achieve those numbers on the existing supplies we have under current rule and law. So our assured water supply program does not allow this to happen without supplies being brought in to meet those demands. So it's a little, from your perspective, I would say it's perhaps a pessimistic look at the world, but one of our jobs is to fulfill.
Wait, we can't have a debate. It's on. We have that as an issue, and we've caught it. And Tony, you're next.
First, thank you very much for this information, and congratulations on your present position. Good luck with
We'll see how it goes.
First, a little bit of information. One of the things you mentioned was the Committee for Research on Speeding Up the Adjudication. Please do. I've been involved with the adjudication for 16 years. I understand there is some promise on the horizon. Honorable Judge Bain, the relatively new head of the adjudication, has asked for recommendations on speeding up the system and cutting down the duality of the system. Seems to be a phenomenally, quite a great idea. I won't elaborate. I'll just say that
there's interest aligned on both sides of that. So
right. I won't start that argument.
Yep, let's not.
The question I have is about the 19,000 acre feet that you mentioned may be available basically for the rural communities, not necessarily only the rural communities, but basically for the rural communities. And if you would go over a brief history of it, transportation challenges, and the differences between paper and actual water. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and this supply is, so it's the lowest priority water that Arizona has, and Arizona has the lowest priority in the Colorado River system. So our view of the supply is that we think it's based on modeling of the Colorado River system as a whole. We think the supply will be available roughly 65% of the time. So if you use that supply, you're going to need some other backup supply. Now that can be local groundwater, or you can use this supply to do recharge and recovery and balance the availability of that supply against your demands. But it's water that would be delivered in the CAP aqueduct. If you needed to bring it locally, you would need to build a diversion and a pipeline and a pumping system to get it off of that. If you can exchange supplies with, and there's already been exchanges, so a lot of the cities, Prescott, for example, had a CAP allocation. When the original allocations were done, it transferred that supply, and I think exchange is really the vehicle for that to work. Payson's done some of that as well. So there's ways to make it happen with both the sort of plumbing of the natural system and existing and new plumbing that would be required to make it happen. So.
Thank you. Mr. Lacey, my congratulations to you. I think you're doing an excellent job. It's like filling the Grand Canyon when you got a spoon for a shovel. In the 1960s, our commission, the Interstate Stream, had a lot of the same things going on that you do. And the ultimate solution we came up with is you had to get water in from some other source, that you just couldn't grow this state without everybody killing everybody else with internal water. That gave rise to the CAP and the fight with California and the lawsuit. We won. But at the same time, we looked for other locations to import water. The Columbia River was one. 2, the lakes in Alaska, 3, the Great Lakes. Well, shortly after the information got out, Oregon got a law passed prohibiting the transfer of water from the Columbia River outside the state. That took care of that. Number 2, the Great Lakes got their own problem now. So you can't go there. The one place that is left are the lakes in Alaska. And the only other person I know in the water business that thinks like I do is the head of the water department in Nevada. And she believes we've got to import water, and a lot of it, to make this whole thing work without everybody fighting everybody else. And there is water available, and the idea would be to get the support of the states where the Ogallala Aquifer is, Texas, Kansas, Oklahoma, all of those states, get California, get New Mexico, Arizona, and we put together another CAP to a bill in Congress to pay for it over a long period of time, and we share it 50-50 with the Ogallala and West. Thank you.
Any comment at all?
Other than we had, a menu of options as we were putting this together, and that was pared back to desal, which we thought was at least politically achievable within the timeframes we're looking at. So, and that's not a comment on your ideas. It's just sort of the process we went through as we looked at what, and part of that is just the federal government's ability to do those sorts of projects. I'm not sure the era of those kinds of projects is sort of seems to be waning, at least from our perspective, and we wanted to perhaps do something that Arizona could tackle itself, at least to get started. And the other thing I didn't touch on is really what role the private sector may play in some of this stuff, perhaps in lieu of the federal government. The facility at Carlsbad that you referenced is actually IDE, which is an Israeli company that builds desal plants all over the world. They're building them in China. They've got them in the Middle East. That entity actually is the capital for building that, and then it's being repaid for through the water rate revenues of San Diego's water utility. So,
I'm going to put a little bit of restriction on. If you go over a minute, you talk too long about your question, and so we're going to go to Marshall.
Thank you for a very articulately delivered presentation, and Tom, thank you for setting the tone for the questions or the feedback. A couple of, well, the first thing I'd like to say is I believe you're challenged with a Sisyphean dilemma. The top of the mountain in this case is increasing demand, and the stone you're rolling is supply. And so as demand increases, you have to roll the stone further up the mountain, which is a very significant challenge. I guess I would ask you to summarize in terms of the commission of your department, which might be better named the Arizona Department of Water Supply, what strategies you have available or can pursue that deal with the demand side of the equation.
We, within the active management areas, we prepare what are called management plans. That are actually the conservation requirements that are imposed on the municipal, agricultural, and industrial sectors. So we actually do impose water conservation requirements on folks within the active management areas. We do not have the authority to do that outside of the active management areas. So those efforts either need to be locally driven. We can assist in those efforts, or they need to be voluntary. But conservation as a, we do have an active conservation program. It is successful. It's a model for folks throughout the world. I mean, people come to learn from us, but our authority ends at the AMA boundary. So.
Well, I would simply appreciate it if, and suggest in your presentation, if you could make the content about conservation or dealing with the demand side of the equation more robust. It might be an important thing to do.
Yeah, and it's I mean, this is a high-level presentation, and we've tried to do it in a way that doesn't get down in the weeds on any one of the topics, so it's sort of a, I mean, we have a lot more information than this report contains, but I'd still be in the first tenth of my presentation if we got to that level of detail. So.
Yeah, I'm kind of shocked that you keep talking about the Colorado being the place that we're going to draw from. Right now, the Colorado is the most endangered river in the United States. The two big reservoirs that we have, Lake Mead is 41% capacity, Lake Powell is 43% capacity, and the snowpack on the western slopes are anywhere from 25 to 45% of normal.
Is ugly.
And it continues to go down every year. You know, our weather changes are happening, and it's affecting the drought that we're seeing. And the other big thing, the more we draw down on water, the larger the arsenic problem is, especially for the Verde Valley and all over the Southwest. I haven't heard you say anything about the water quality as far as the arsenic, but the Colorado, that's going to be a dead issue.
Comment?
We have planned for a shortage on the Colorado River system. So we've banked water. Whether this is a short-term drought or whether it's a long-term shift in the hydrology of the basin, I mean, we'll know that when we get there. That's really why these additional supplies may be important. We've certainly put a lot of effort into protecting ourselves. I mean, because we are the lowest priority in the system, it's important. It's always been important for Arizona to back those supplies up, and we've spent a lot of money and we've put a lot of water in the ground that we will be able to recover in times of shortage, and it will buy us the time to respond to. If these conditions continue, we'll have time to respond and take action.
But we need to recognize that the water banking is being done in the main active management areas, not even the Prescott active management area.
But I mean, the specific question was for the Colorado users of the Colorado River system, and that's who we've been banking the water for. So that's just a function of it. There are recharge projects in the Verde system. There's reclaimed water that's being reused or being stored for future use, and there's also some surface water recharge and recovery that happens in Chino Valley area. So
minimal.
Oh.
Yeah, and just quickly, what I think the concern is that if we do an exchange from Colorado River over here for a desalinization plant somewhere, then we're banking on the Colorado River supplying our major water needs or impacting our groundwater supplies on a continual basis. I mean, I'm not against one or the other until I see the facts, but
right.
we are not part of the Water Banking Authority up here.
Correct. And,
okay.
And the robustness of the package is really what needs to be looked at as you kind of move ideas like that forward.
Okay.
Just a very brief question. How can we get a copy of this? Is it available? And if so, how do we obtain one of the PowerPoint?
Online. Yeah. It's so our main web page. There's links to both the full report, all 400 pages of it, and then the presentation. There's a one-page summary. There's also an executive summary as well. So it's been packaged in different sized chunks for folks to consume, and if it's not, Michelle's responsible for putting that up, and she says it's online right now. So
to that question, we taped the whole presentation, and so it'll be up on our website and on Sedona Biz. Yeah. So one more over there, and then we're coming over here, and we'll get over that.
2 quick points for clarification. In the strategy for conservation, I'm reminded, looking at your slide of the CAP canal, does that include a look at the loss due to evaporation as far as the conservation strategy?
It has not been included. There's about 75,000 acre-feet a year that is lost to evaporation in the CAP system. We have not looked at doing things to reduce that number. If that's the question, I mean
And then the other question relates to litigation. And can we assume that that includes, when you're talking about resolving these litigation issues, that the subflow issue is included in that strategy?
When I discuss the groundwater, surface water, that's really that issue. So yes.
Over here.
Thank you for coming out, sir. When you mentioned the 100-year supply that developers needed, I'm looking for some clarification. My understanding is the Board of Supervisors in each county has to vote to approve that, and oftentimes they don't want to go against developers, so we don't end up falling under that. And segueing off of that, has there been any, has anybody looked into, instead of new developments, refurbishing or redeveloping areas that already have existing water hookups? Thank you, sir.
To the second question, I'm sure the answer to that is yes. The first question, it does require a unanimous vote of the local jurisdictions to adopt the water adequacy. So it's not an easy bar to leap over, but it is possible. So.
Mr. Lacy, tomorrow there's going to be a meeting of the GUAC talking about the fourth management plan.
Right.
There was no mention here today in the graph of water demand for solving the mining issue. That is to say, overdraft or not meeting safe yield in the AMAs, that sort of thing. How can you not include something about the water balances needed for the future demand that includes something for the mining?
The way that this was put together, and it's a different view, when you get into looking at the individual planning area write-ups, we did not take the traditional water balance approach to this. So we really looked at the demand picture and the projection, but then we had just completed an effort looking at water level trends across the state, and really the sort of the hydrologic analysis that went into this is looking at how well the existing hydrologic system is responding to the stresses that are put on it today, and then projecting those forward and looking at it. So when we start talking about water budgets, there's always a challenge of folks, you know, we've done efforts in the past where we've looked at how much groundwater is in storage in a basin, and then how long that can last at current consumption rates or things like that. And I really wanted to stay away from that with this effort, and just focus on the demand side of the picture. You know, I'm not going to steal the thunder of the folks tomorrow at the GUAC, but I mean, this department declared the Prescott AMA to be out of safe yield in 1999, and that declaration still stands. I mean, that's where we are.
No more questions. Thank you very much, Acting Director. Appreciate it. I just want to make something clear. ADWR has certain regulations, laws, and other items that it has to and must follow. They're part of the executive branch, but the legislature has a lot of control over the laws of this state. And so whether it was the former director or the acting director or directors 10 years from now, they have to do what they have to do under the guidance of the laws of this state. So whatever happens, the enemies are not within the department. The process is outside the department that we need to deal with. Now, before everybody gets going, we're going to have a short meeting of the membership, but I want to make sure you're up to date on a couple things. There are three things that the partnerships has made a decision, the board has made a decision that we're going to start to follow. One of them is this strategic plan. So if you're on our you're on our database or in our database, you will be getting discussion papers on these issues on a consistent basis now and through the years, because this is not going to be a short-term problem. The second thing is the Sireworms project, the Central Yavapai Highlands Water Resource Management Study, which is an integral part of what's going on here for our area. We are going to keep you updated on that, along with discussion papers to the WAC and to the general public. The third thing is the supply and demand study on the Colorado River. It is imperative that you tie all three of these together. Because if you start going away from here today and thinking, well, this is on it, stands on its own, it doesn't. Because I haven't asked the director, but I think it's part of another discussion, but where are the resources coming from the state to help us meet the timelines that are going to be factored in here? Because I know the cities and towns, and I'm seeing the good supervisor's head here going, oh my God. There is no funding here for this type of an effort right now. And I heard that the federal government doesn't have that funding either. And so we have a challenge to overcome. And I'm glad you came out to hear that challenge firsthand. So we are going to continually update you proactively on this process. Having said that, you need to be involved, your neighbors need to be involved. This goes directly to the economic viability of the state and your own pocketbooks. Sooner or later, somebody has to pay. And so if you don't care about water, care about your pocketbook. If you don't care about the law, care about your pocketbook. And don't get caught in the process of going, why is my water rate 10 times or 5 times or 3 times as much as it used to be? Because the planning is going to cost money, the implementation is going to cost money, the energy is going to cost money, and the long-term viability of these projects are going to cost money. And that's what everybody has to start to understand. Now is the time to be involved. And I think ADWR is doing a wonderful job getting across the state, trying to get people interested in the process and understanding the process as much as they can. With that, we're going to stop the, oh, Jane, I got you.
I just wanted to ask this question of everybody here. Republicans like to talk about being...
No political, no politics.
Being fiscally responsible and living within a financial budget. Why can't we talk about living within a water budget?
We should. I agree with you. Everybody talks about living within their own budgets, their own checkbook, their own pay stub. We have to start thinking about that when it comes to water. Doug Wall back there said to me to remind you, we don't have too much further in Lake Mead to get down to the, what level is that, Doug? Deadpool? Right here. The shortage. Yeah. Not too much more, and we start getting hit. I think the Department of Interior came out and said, the Undersecretary said, 2016 is one of those areas we have to look at as far as real shortages on the Colorado River. And so with that, if the members of the board and the members of the partnership would come up to the front, we can get our real business done as far as the organization goes. I'd like you to stay, Tom, because you're a voting partner. And the rest of you are more than welcome to stay. Thank you very much.